La verità è che non ci siamo mai fermati. Proprio quando il tempo sembrava immobile, il pensiero si è mosso in un modo diverso. In quell'istante è cambiato tutto. Abbiamo costruito qualcosa che fosse solido abbastanza da sostenere quella leggerezza. Abbiamo trovato il nostro tempo, chi veloce, chi lento. Un tempo umano, un tempo nuovo.
I PID, punti impresa digitale delle Camere di Commercio, sono il punto di riferimento per tutti gli imprenditori che vogliono digitalizzare la loro impresa e approfittare delle opportunità legate all'uso delle tecnologie 4.0 per entrare a pieno titolo nell'economia digitale. Ma in che modo i PID aiutano gli imprenditori? I PID, punti impresa digitale, offrono alle imprese strumenti specifici per misurare il loro livello di maturità digitale in chiave 4.0 e definire con maggiore precisione le strategie di miglioramento. Selfie 4.0 è un questionario di autovalutazione da compilare online che restituisce automaticamente un report sui livelli di digitalizzazione dell'impresa. Zoom 4.0 è una valutazione più approfondita, svolta direttamente in azienda insieme al Digital Promoter della Camera di Commercio, che permette di definire in modo più dettagliato i percorsi di digitalizzazione da intraprendere. Digital Skill Voyager, dedicato a studenti e lavoratori, è un test per misurare le competenze digitali attraverso un gioco online, un vero e proprio viaggio nel tempo a tappe in chiave digitale. I PID realizzano incontri di informazione e formazione sulle tecnologie 4.0. Così le imprese possono acquisire un quadro più chiaro e capire come migliorare, attraverso il digitale, processi di lavoro, prodotti e servizi. I PID si avvalgono di un network di professionisti che, nel ruolo di mentor, supportano gli imprenditori nelle scelte da compiere sui temi del digitale e del change management. Attraverso i PID si viene indirizzati verso i servizi avanzati proposti dagli altri attori del network Impresa 4.0, quali i Competence Center del mondo universitario, i Digital Innovation Hub e gli ecosistemi digitali dell'innovazione delle associazioni di categoria. Tutte le principali strutture che operano a livello nazionale per favorire l'innovazione e la digitalizzazione delle imprese si trovano su atlantei4.0.it. I PID mettono a disposizione delle imprese dei voucher per l'acquisto di servizi di consulenza, formazione e tecnologie in ambito impresa 4.0. I voucher sono erogati direttamente dalla Camera di Commercio attraverso bandi ai quali possono partecipare imprese singole o, se condividono un progetto di innovazione, organizzate in gruppo. Che aspetti a entrare nell'economia digitale? Contatta il PID della tua Camera di Commercio o vai su .impresadigitale.camcom.it.
Sosteniamo le donne e gli uomini impegnati nello sviluppo delle imprese e delle attività professionali per affrontare le sfide imprenditoriali, sociali e culturali del nostro tempo, contribuendo al bene comune. Compagnia delle Opere, un criterio ideale, un'amicizia operativa.
Civiltà dell'amore, fratelli e sorelle, costruite senza stancarvi mai questa civiltà. Lavorate per questo, pregate per questo, soffrite per questo.
Buongiorno a tutti.
Good morning and welcome. Good morning to the people who are here in front of us and the people who are following us online. So we have two sets of people following us. So the future of work is the title of our event today. At the end of this very interesting meeting, we analyzed a topic that has been a common denominator of many events these days. And today, we would like to look at it from a different perspective by working with the friends from Compagnia delle Opere and some of the friends who are here today. We have analyzed the great changes that the labor market has gone through in the last few years. For example, the young people and how difficult it was for them to accept the commitment of work, the problem of young unemployment, generations losing their jobs and finding it difficult to re-enter the labor market. These are all fundamental problems. And the new smart work methods that we've adopted with the pandemic. So we're talking about a series of changes to the work environment. And we would like to talk about this today. About this and about the impact they have on labor policies, for example, and also on the meaning that we give to work. I remember Don Giussani talked about the need for work, the necessity of work. Work among love, friendship, arts is one of the fundamental needs of human beings. And this is the kind of perspective that we would like to adopt. And in order to deal with this topic, we would like to adopt a different method. We would like to start from real cases expressed by people from the workers' environment. So as we don't have much time available, I will try to be brief in my introduction to our guests. The two introductory speeches that will tell us about new things in the labor market are by Dario Odifreddi, president of Piazza dei Mestieri and of Consorzio Scuole, Lavoro, and by Daniele Sacco, who has great experience in international companies. He's a human resource manager and the legal counsel at Mondadori Group. And then, after the two speeches, we will hear the opinion of Marco Bentivogli, coordinator and co-founder of Italia, Cristina Scocchia, who has a great experience as manager in international companies. She's managing director of Illycaffè and board member of EssilorLuxottica. And then we will hear from Giuseppe Tripoli, Secretary General of Unioncamere, with a great experience in the world of SMEs, because we know that SMEs are being affected by these changes, because not just large companies, but also SMEs, where the relationship between employer and employee is a bit stronger, are feeling the impact of these changes. So now the floor to our first guest, Dario Odifreddi. Please, the floor is yours. Thank you. Good morning. As for the labor market, there are some positive news. Italy has achieved for the first time in years an employment rate that is higher than 60%. However, we still face a very challenging situation. On the one hand, as you know, the employment rate for female workers is very low. And then maybe we will ask Cristina, what are the conditions that could favor and improve this situation? And we don't have many young people working. And as everybody's talking about, we have a huge amount of young people who are neither studying nor working, so-called needs. So we have a labor emergency in our country. And after the pandemic, it seems new phenomena are emerging that are more connected to the meaning of work. And that is voluntary resignation. Workers live in the countries, and probably other guests will help us understand what is going on in Western countries with regard to this. And there's also the issue of young people, especially, looking for a job that leaves you enough time to live. These phenomena tell us that people now are looking for meaning in their jobs. Is work still something considered as giving meaning to one's life? Especially for young people, this seems not to be the case. Last year, we met 5,000 young people and in our Piazza dei Mestieri, and this is still an open question. We've been able to give an answer to these kind of questions with the Catholic culture, the laborist culture. We've been able to create the conditions so that work and development went hand in hand. But now things have changed. There is a crisis, an ongoing crisis in this sector, especially for young people. Young workers are an essential resource for the future of the country. And they are an essential resource also for the development of the country, because the risk is that the replacement rate will be insufficient. I mean, the replacement rate between people who leave work and people who have to replace them. So we often hear about companies looking for employees and who cannot find the right people for certain jobs. And this, of course, also relates to education, because young people go to school, but they're not interested in what they're studying. And if there is a lack of interest at that level, that lack of interest will have repercussions on their ideas of future. We've tortured young people with these nightmares of precarious employment. You will live in a way that will be far worse than your parents had. So we've basically destroyed their hopes. And we didn't encourage their sense of responsibility. And we haven't been able to find solutions that are effective enough. In Italy, as you know, we have active policies that don't work, and then we have passive policies like citizenship income that are not effective enough. I know that we don't have much time left, so I'll go back to the questions. So the first question that I have is, regardless of politics, the political world, and education agencies, what is your opinion? What can be done? Cristina, how can a large or small company give its own contribution for the future of new generation in the work field? And for Marco, an organization like Base Italia that you created, why did you decide to create it? And you have great experience in trade unions, so how can trade unions involve young people? How can we make them feel protagonists of their own future? Thank you. Now the floor to Daniele Sacco for the second set of questions. Daniele? Thank you, Guido, and thank you for your invitation. It's always very useful to go over issues, especially after these 2 years in which the situation was very different from what it used to be. I've been working in this field for 36 years, and I've traveled worldwide, so my point of view is a global one. In the last 2 years, I think some dynamics became clearer and clearer, and I'd like to share them with you because they are the starting point for the question that I would like to ask our guests. So it seems to me that in these last 2 years, especially considering what I've seen, we see a supremacy of skills over hierarchy. And we can decide whether to continue in this direction or go back to the past. And responsibility taking. Those who started to act and decided to act did it regardless of their role within the company, because there was a situation in which you had to protect the common good. This is another interesting point. And the work, the approach that considers work linked to objectives rather than considering the time spent doing a job. So we no longer have this illusion that we can check on what people are doing, but making sure that they spend the right amount of time working. And then there is hybrid work, with the need to redefine corporate spaces that are no longer just physical, but also virtual. And there's also the need to have 3 or 4 different generations communicate. So workers, young workers that are 20 and workers who are 65 maybe. And a set of needs emerged, personal needs that maybe already existed but were not so clearly expressed. The need for flexibility, for example, especially for those who also take care of either children or parents. The need for fair treatment, for example, as far as genders are concerned. And the need for a meaning of work that goes beyond the economic value. And we heard also ministers talking about young people being choosy, but I think I saw something different here. A different kind of need, the need for a new kind of meaning attributed to work that goes beyond work ethics and sacrifice for work reasons. So I think we need to reconsider the relationships inside the work environment. And that is the issue my question considers. But I think we should consider leadership as being no longer self-centered, but focused on workers, colleagues, a kind of kind leadership with a different relation between workers and employers. So all the transitions that we see going on right now, ESG, the gender issues, the coexistence between different generations, technology, AI, they all stress the importance of the person as someone who's at the center of the labor environment, as a subject, not as an object of change, as a victim of change. So this is a great challenge. And so this is my question. Considering everything that I've just said, how should the corporate culture change? Should practices change? And should leaders change? Thank you.
Grazie Daniele Sacco.
Thank you, Daniele. This is a very interesting challenge. Our speakers have 10 minutes each to answer these questions that go to the core of the situation of young people nowadays, the relationship within the company. And we thought this change in relationships involves everyone, trade unions, the company, SMEs. So we would like to ask our guests to tackle this issue starting from their own individual experience. So we follow the alphabetical order. So Marco Bentivogli, the floor is yours. Thank you for your invitation. First of all, I think it's essential when we talk about the future of work to clarify that there is a future for the work sector, because people are starting to say that work will change, will evolve. But we don't have to be catastrophic in our view. Work, of course, changes, evolves, because we have the demographic, the digital, and the environmental transitions going on. And this, of course, all of these impact the labor market. So our interpretation tools are not effective anymore, the traditional ones, because all categories are no longer useful in order to interpret the situation. So as young people say today, we need to get rid of paternalism, because the meaning of work is not something that we can inherit from other people. So we need to change our approach. And these transitions are very important and should be taken into account. Because, for example, from an environmental point of view, organizational models are changing, production models are changing, the carbon footprint of each activity has to be monitored, and this changes things. If you work remotely, or if you are physically present in the company, your carbon footprint is different. And then any ideology should be eliminated. We cannot work remotely 100%, or we can be physically present 100%. Within each kind of work environment, we should analyze the situation, the activities that are performed, and decide which ones are for sharing, analysis of the situation. These kind of activities have to be done with being physically present there. Remote work cannot be effective in that case. But there are some operational activities that can be performed remotely, sometimes even more effectively. So the digital transformation is kind of defreezing the time and space of work, because, and for us as Italians, it is difficult. We connect the labor activities to the place where we work. We identify our job with the place in which we go to perform our job. And this should change. So now things are changing. We are separating the place of work and work itself. In the US market, we see that there are deskless offices that are becoming more and more popular. For us in the past, it was essential to have an office where we would go to perform our work activities. This is no longer the case. So we need to rethink our workspaces. When I work as a trade union representative, we would negotiate on times, but we would never negotiate on space. But space generates changes. If a space is oppressive, if management offices are still organized hierarchically, so on the first floor you will have people that are less important, then you go one floor up and you have people that are a bit more important, that you go one floor up again, and then you have middle management maybe. And you have, for example, plants. This is a sign of power. And then you go one floor up and they have a refrigerator, for example, or a floor up and you have a room for meetings. But this kind of organization doesn't really help work relations. In the kind of building that I just described, which is the modern, the traditional building, like in Fantozzi's movies, where you have the Uber boss at the top floor. So the paradigm of control, it's totally useless. It's an illusion. The idea that we still seem to have in many workplaces, that if that person is in front of us and is writing down on a computer, that person is being productive, is wrong. Responsibility taking is more important. Having a project and objectives that we are measured against is more important, more effective. Time is not a fundamental parameter to be connected to payment. As a trade union in the metalworking sector, I fought to increase the hourly pay. But what is more important is creating a different kind of balance between life and work, and do that without considering that for young people work is not important, because this is not the case. Work has a different kind of importance, a different kind of role in their life. And the digital transformation also has other effects. Robotics, for example, eliminates repetitive activities and highlights the importance of cognitive activities. So our value, a value that a machine cannot replace, is our being human. And that is why we need to rediscover the passion for human beings, for humankind. Because no robot, no algorithm will be able to simulate humanity. This is an added value that we have and that we kind of forgot. When I say try to describe our humanity, it is difficult because it is no longer so central for us. But when I say that repetitive kind of jobs are being reduced, people seem to disagree. But in factories, the cognitive load is very high. You need to use your brain very much. The more advanced factories have a goal that is zero fatigue. But we understood that with technologies, effort is not essential, and it's not the value that we should pursue. This is one point. And to conclude, all these elements lead to this increase of the number of people who resign voluntarily. And this happens worldwide, in China, in Europe, in the US. The pandemic highlighted certain things that already existed. People now, the people who have this kind of idea are young people with high professional skills. And these people very often don't leave a job when they already have another one. There are people who take a break to think about things. And this is becoming a serious problem. We have been speaking to CEOs all over Italy, and they told us that very often it's key people in the company that leave. And so this is a problem, and it is concerning. It is worrying because it has economic repercussions. And the Chinese people realize this. China stops only for New Year, for New Year's Eve, when people for 2 weeks go back to their families. They go back to the places where they were born. And company give a red envelope at the beginning of New Year's period. It's a kind of Chinese New Year's reward. But now they are giving this red envelope only when the workers come back, because young people sometimes don't come back. They feel the need to be reconnected to their roots. And the same is happening in Italy too. There is a share of young people who, when they have the opportunity to choose, they choose which kind of work to do and where to do it. And compensation is not so important anymore. We keep saying that people go abroad because they are paid more, but this is not the case. They go abroad because there is a different kind of treatment for them as people. So this is an issue that is not to be considered only from a negative point of view. It's telling us that workplaces, companies need to attract once again workers, to make them feel protagonists, and to increase workers' participation, as we as trade unions have been saying for a long time. Asking the opinion of people who perform a certain kind of job every day is what we used to call creating substantial democracy. And that is why the future of work will not be a catastrophe. It will be an opportunity for us to build this future day after day. That is why I say that we need work architects, those who place by place, office by office, will rebuild, redesign the new architectures of labor. Thank you.
Grazie, grazie a Bentivogli.
Thank you. Thanks to Marco Bentivogli. Now the floor goes to Cristina Scocchia. I would like to ask her what it means to reconquer people in the situation that has been described by Dario Odifreddi and Daniele Sacco. I won't ask you on which floor your office is in your company. Thank you for inviting me at this meeting to speak of such an important topic, the future of work and the future of leadership, because, you know, going back to what has been said so far, we are also wondering what is the future of leadership, what the leadership needs and what we need. So I think that we need to integrate the value with values. I mean, the economic value with the social, environmental values. It is clear that there are some characteristics, some elements that have always been important, but they are not enough anymore. A leader should always think strategically with a longer-term view and make even unpopular and difficult decisions, and make this decision timely. And then they need to create motivated and strong teams. So this thinking, these decision-making abilities and strong teams are as important today as they were in the past, and I think they will also be so in the future. However, these conditions are, again, necessary, but not enough. We need leaders who are able to integrate cognitive intelligence with emotional intelligence. We need to be empathic, to be humble. We need leaders who want to conquer the trust of their team. My office is not in the attic. I've always wanted an office on the ground floor or first floor, because I've always thought that it is very important to be trusted by the people who work with me. It is clear that I take responsibility for the most difficult decisions, but it is also very important to know when it is necessary to give responsibility to others. We need to trust our teams. We need to let them grow, especially young people, because they are our future. We are in their hands. And it's only when we give them responsibilities, when we entrust them with responsible tasks, that it is possible to do something different, to have a leadership that is based on meritocracy, on participation, on credibility, trust, transparency.
Comunicazione diverso, più empatico, più coinvolgente, più
and on a different communication style. This should be more empathic, more direct. And leadership doesn't mean power. Maybe it was so in the past. Leadership means responsibility, to be responsible for the people who trust you and who rely on you. Because people want to trust their leaders, but also to rely on their leaders, not only in companies, but in any kind of domain. This is why you don't need a big office or some clear signs saying that you are the leader, but you need something different. And I think that we would need something similar to the Hippocrates oath for entrepreneurs to work for the well-being of people, to have an impact on the quality of life of people, and therefore follow more ethical principles in our everyday actions, acting for the good of the people and of the community. This is the leadership we need. This is the kind of things that we need for the future. And going back to the question that asked earlier on, why are there so many people who are not satisfied with their jobs? It is clear that young people are unsatisfied. The Great Resignation is something that was born in the United States, but also in our country, because 49% of young people say that they are not satisfied with their job. And we need to ask ourselves why. Why does it happen in Italy? In Italy, it's so difficult to find a job. But at the same time, companies see a lot of people resigning, and it's mainly young people under 35 years who very often do not have another job but decide to leave the job they have. And this happens especially in the north and in the center of Italy, especially if they are cultivated, if they have studied. This happens because during the pandemic, they started asking themselves questions. They started questioning their lives, their priorities, their values, and they decided that private life must rank first. So they asked for more flexibility, for a better balance between work and life, and a meaning coming from their jobs. A job that should be in line maybe with their passions, with their interests. And then they also want a company that share their same values. They want to see their values recognized, and they want to see that the company is deeply committed to defending the environment, for example, and not just formally. This is a challenge that we should take up day in, day out. We should really wonder every day if we are doing our best, as in an examination of conscience. Do we have an open dialogue with the young people? Do we have an equal dialogue with them on an equal level? And do we allow them to know us, not just as managers, as representatives, but as people, individuals? Because, you know, we have strengths, but we also have weaknesses. Are we doing our best to understand the level of flexibility that we can offer our co-workers? And are we creating organizations that are not only inclusive, but ready to enhance the value of differences? Are we doing our best to have a social and environmental responsibility plan, and a plan that is tangible, concrete? Are we investing in lifelong learning, in upskilling? I think that if we had answers to, I won't say all of these questions, but at least some of them of these questions, we wouldn't have the Great Resignation. We wouldn't have young people unsatisfied with their jobs. I was so lucky to have the chance to look at myself, my passion, my personal goals, and then I worked hard. But I can tell you that I'm lucky because I recognize my passion and my enthusiasm in my job. I don't do it because I have to, because I must, but because I can find a sense, a meaning in it. And I can find this sense of responsibility. And I would like young people to be given this opportunity, the same opportunities. And I want to tell them, don't let yourself be demoralized or disappointed, because having a job is important, but it is important to work on something that is satisfying for you, that is something you're keen on, with other people who share your same social, environmental, cultural values. This is the main thing that we should have to face these challenges. And then there's another point. Our world has limited resources. by nature, by definition. And there is a growing gap between the poor and the rich, and it won't but keep on growing, keep on being wider, getting wider. And so we should forget the business and wealth models of the 1900th century, which we are used to, abandon them to build a new model. And so all of us, we play a major role, a crucial role in this. And we must be united, act together to build this future, this dream of the future that we all need.
Grazie, grazie dottoressa Scocchia. Adesso
Thank you very much to Ms. Scocchia. And now let's move to Giuseppe Tripoli. You know very well the world of small and medium enterprises that has been mentioned several times, oftentimes, so maybe you can help us go more in depth into the topic. Thank you very much, and thank you for inviting me at the meeting. The sense, the meaning of job is a very delicate and thorny topic, because it is clear that it is important to start working. But as other people have already said before me, our job will be one of the most important things in the most important moments of our lives. So giving a sense and a meaning to our jobs is a goal that we shouldn't have only when we start working at the beginning of our working life, but something that should be rediscovered and re-emphasized day in, day out. Before the pandemic, I read a book that really struck me. It is by Luca Ricolfi, an important sociologist. And this book's title was La società signorile di massa, which corresponds to, let's say, the mass upper class. What did the book tell? Well, in Italy, most of the population lives not thanks to the income that they get from their jobs, but from the money that they got from their parents or the houses that they got from their parents. And there are activities that are compared to slavery, and these activities are those performed by migrants. And the chance to survive and to live well is the core. But considering that, well, I was given resources by others and my income is not enough, why should I be working and keep on working? After a few months, the pandemic broke out, and we all remember doctors, nurses, staff from the institutions, military forces, all the people who from the very beginning have been involved in the management. At that point, being a nurse didn't mean to have an income, to get money, to earn some money, but to do something for the community. And I work with the community I live in, with the city I live in, and I had to help them go beyond that tragic moment. So think of the civil engagement also of state institutions and the amount of work that they had to perform. So at that moment, working was not just for the sake of earning money, but working meant something more. than getting a salary. And then let's look at the reality of things. This is made up of a series of elements, of components that seem to, well, apparently tell the contrary. Companies are often asked by our association questions to understand how the labor market is going. And they tell us that very often they hire people based on the word to mouth, meaning that someone else advised them or recommended them to hire that person or the other. But the system, this system is not working anymore. There are a lot of different ways and different networks where they can find people, where they can draw people from. And it is clear that something is not working. In Italy, we are ranked first in terms of number of NEET generation members, and for several other reasons. If you remember, a lot of years ago, people tended to say that, well, you know, you go to school, you go to high school, and then you can go to university. But if you don't feel like, or if you don't have the abilities, the skills, maybe it's better to choose a technical high school and head for the world of work. In Italy, professional and technical schools actually lost students, and they are still lagging behind because more and more people decided to go to licei, so to schools that required university after that. By the way, I think that since school, we should do something. I mean, with students going to school, because we need to tell them that they are making important choices. Then, working independently. Being an independent worker is extremely difficult in Italy. And if you want to set up a business, no one is supporting you. And as years go by, it gets more and more complicated because, you know, there are any kind of regulations to comply with, European regulations or sanitary regulations. In the past, it was less complicated, whereas now it is much more complicated to set up a business. And there's a figure saying that in 10 years' time, the number of businesses set up by people aged less than 35 are very few. And this is due to the fact that lots of young people, I remember that before the pandemic, about 90,000 young people decided to leave Italy and go abroad. But again, if you want to set up a business with a specific business plan that allows you to understand what kind of support you can get economically speaking or digitally speaking, that's a problem, because the Chamber of Commerce does something similar, associations do something similar, but there is no concerted action. And this situation tells us something specific. That is, work is important, jobs are important, setting up businesses is something important, but it is not so important, so primary for this country. A very last remark, because I don't have much time left. recently, I focused on something that is at the basis of the world of work and businesses. In the US, in the 80s, they used to say that you set up a business because you want to get as high as a shareholder. But it is clear that if you do that, and if you don't do what I was saying before about the heroes of the pandemic who were working for something more, going beyond the fact of just working and earning money, well, it means that there is an important problem. And then let me draw your attention to the word of small and medium businesses. Well, I would say that both large and small and medium enterprises leave this kind of situation. They experience these problems. And in Italy, there are mainly companies that invest, well, not mainly, but largely, company that invest not only for making a profit, but for doing something more, and who are more far-sighted and look at the long term. And I can tell you that these companies attract the highest number of graduates who attract brains. And so there are small and medium companies that are more and more heading in this direction and that are being supported.
Ringrazio i tre nostri ospiti e tutti i nostri ospiti perché sono stati nel tempo previsti.
Let's thank our guests for sticking with the times so that we have some time for another round of questions. One question, actually. Today we've said that to deal with the new world of work, we don't need new, let's say, rules of engagement, both in the, let's say, basic level than for higher levels. But once again, we should rethink what leadership means, what being a business person means. I think that this is a very interesting point. In order to be fascinating, to attract people, we should tell what fascinates or attracts us, what we like being a business person. And I think that this is an idea that we should take home as food for thought. But going now to the very last question that I wanted to ask, I would like to draw your attention on what Mr. Draghi said yesterday. He said that we should be optimistic, and he wanted us to have some awareness, the awareness of what we have done in the last 2 years. Even in the past, there were people who were very pessimistic, saying that the Italian companies would have succumbed. But I think that his optimistic spirit and mindset is the right one, even if now the crisis seems to be even higher, even larger than in the past. The prices are rocketing, there is the war and the geopolitical tensions. So very quickly, 5 minutes each to each one of these guests to tell us what kind of urgent matters should be dealt with by managers, representatives of companies, and those who are involved in the business sector. I would follow the alphabetical order once again.
Well, after the optimism of Mario Draghi, the risk is that we're going to say something different, because we always need hopeful people, but at the same time, we need to consider the real situation in front of us. Our labor market is very unequal, unfair, and if we don't see that, things will get worse. So we have to be very clear, and we cannot hide the problems. I'm not saying Mr. Draghi did that, but sometimes we run the risk of telling ourselves things. People say, for example, after your government concluded its term, employment increased, but it's since 2005 that poverty tripled. So it's a shared responsibility. So we are aware of the fact that quality information now is at risk. So we should go back to figures, because policies are based on figures. We cannot have short-term solutions anymore. If we think about next fall, we can clearly see that the demographic transition plays an essential role, because in the next 30 years, so we need to start dealing with this since next fall, we're going to have 8 million Italian workers less, because the demographic situation is such that we are becoming a country of elderly people. So now we need services to deal with elderly people. But at the same time, we need to support young people, because when the economy is doing well, but is risking a worsening, for example, the Financial Times is saying that hedge funds right now are kind of a safety belt. For Italy, we can attribute responsibility to other subjects, but the situation is dangerous right now. And it may become even more problematic, because we have population growth on the one hand, but the region southern of this, in 2050, will reach 1 million inhabitants. So we are thinking about new policies to impact reality. But the policies that can have real impact right now are long-term ones. The short-term policies are not effective. So we need to start immediately. I don't think that professional training has failed yet. In terms of professional training, we have several projects that are very effective ones. For example, Piazza dei Mestieri of our friend Dario, or technical institutes. But we needed to hear it from the Organization for Economic Development. Right now, inequalities risk increasing. So we need to redesign training processes. Nowadays, social mobility is hindered. We want young people to be the protagonists of change. And so that when they are 13 and 14, they can start thinking about their hopes and aspirations with someone supporting them. I think it is essential because next fall will be a very complex season. And we cannot simply tell young people that they can sit on the bench for now. We need to create the right training processes towards independence. And in the past, we used to consider work as a defense tool against power, because work is the basis of democracy. So I think we need to move in this direction. And we need to share with young people all this. So my slogan would be work better, work together, and work for everyone. This is really the requirement for any country right now. Thank you. Now we are a bit late, so I would like to ask 2 minutes to Ms. Scocchia and 2 minutes to Mr. Tripoli. What should we expect? Well, next fall will be a complicated season. The next 6, 12 to 18 months is going to be complicated. In Italy, we have 100,000 companies that are at a risk of bankruptcy. We're talking about small companies, especially in services, in the building sector, and in southern Italy. But we're talking about 830,000 employees. They have debts for billions, so their default would cause problems to the credit system in Italy. So the situation is not positive, and the OECD data are not positive right now. Our wages are the lowest in Italy, and they were reduced in the last 20 years by 2.9%, whereas in other countries they increased significantly up to 30%. Of course, those countries saw a GDP growth that was more significant. Our productivity remained stagnant even in 2019. So families right now cannot face the rise in prices. It's not possible to have a decent life with such huge price increases. So the fall will be a complicated season, this next fall. But we need to keep hope up, because when you face a problem, you need to speed up things. So I think it's important that we all play our part, and whoever is governing next year, they will have to think about how to give families their purchasing power back. And we should think about industrial plans that are based on innovation, digitalization, so that it's possible to continue to create jobs, because this is what we need. Giuseppe, one last comment on next fall. Well, the failure of professional training does not refer to isolated experiences, but I was referring to figures. The number of students that attend professional training is extremely limited, far lower than Germany and France, for the reasons that I explained before. In next fall, again, I agree, the situation is going to be very complicated. This is a new situation for us, with an increase in the price of raw materials, of energy. And so we have to get ready for this, because right now margins for companies are dropping at a risky level. And this is, of course, because of the war and many other events. And we cannot solve this by ourselves. We need Europe. For example, the gas price can have a maximum threshold. But Europe needs to decide whether to support companies so that they survive this period, especially SMEs, because they're all in a difficult situation. So if Europe invests on enterprises, for example, reducing the cost of labor in companies, it is still extremely high. Globalization, as it emerges from this new geopolitical situation, does not consider work as a commodity. Nobody moves to China hoping to find workers that can perform the same kind of activity that we perform in Italy. This doesn't happen anymore. So we have more than 4 million micro enterprises in Italy. And the digital transition offers these companies opportunities to grow. So next fall, the National Recovery and Resilience Plan will have to be implemented to the advantage of companies, citizens, so that they can profit from it. Thank you. Thank you for your contribution. In order to transmit passion and responsibility, I think we need to recover our own passion. And listening to very passionate people, I think it's the right way. So this is what we will have to do as Compagnia delle Opere, share our passion and help each other in difficult times. So I'd like to remind you that our meeting that is concluding today can continue if we support our meeting. There are specific corners that are called Dona Ora, and you have the opportunity of supporting this activity. And please remember that these donations can be deducted from your income. Thank you.
Civiltà dell'amore, fratelli e sorelle, costruite senza stancarvi mai questa civiltà. Lavorate per questo, pregate per questo, soffrite per questo.
La verità è che non ci siamo mai fermati. Proprio quando il tempo sembrava immobile, il pensiero si è mosso in un modo diverso. In quell'istante è cambiato tutto. Abbiamo costruito qualcosa che fosse solido abbastanza da sostenere quella leggerezza. Abbiamo trovato il nostro tempo, chi veloce, chi lento. Un tempo umano, un tempo nuovo.
I PID, punti impresa digitale delle Camere di Commercio, sono il punto di riferimento per tutti gli imprenditori che vogliono digitalizzare la loro impresa e approfittare delle opportunità legate all'uso delle tecnologie 4.0 per entrare a pieno titolo nell'economia digitale. Ma in che modo i PID aiutano gli imprenditori? I PID, punti impresa digitale, offrono alle imprese strumenti specifici per misurare il loro livello di maturità digitale in chiave 4.0 e definire con maggiore precisione le strategie di miglioramento. Selfie 4.0 è un questionario di autovalutazione da compilare online che restituisce automaticamente un report sui livelli di digitalizzazione dell'impresa. Zoom 4.0 è una valutazione più approfondita, svolta direttamente in azienda insieme al Digital Promoter della Camera di Commercio, che permette di definire in modo più dettagliato i percorsi di digitalizzazione da intraprendere. Digital Skill Voyager, dedicato a studenti e lavoratori, è un test per misurare le competenze digitali attraverso un gioco online, un vero e proprio viaggio nel tempo a tappe in chiave digitale. I PID realizzano incontri di informazione e formazione sulle tecnologie 4.0. Così le imprese possono acquisire un quadro più chiaro e capire come migliorare, attraverso il digitale, processi di lavoro, prodotti e servizi. I PID si avvalgono di un network di professionisti che, nel ruolo di mentor, supportano gli imprenditori nelle scelte da compiere sui temi del digitale e del change management. Attraverso i PID si viene indirizzati verso i servizi avanzati proposti dagli altri attori del network Impresa 4.0, quali i Competence Center del mondo universitario, i Digital Innovation Hub e gli ecosistemi digitali dell'innovazione delle associazioni di categoria. Tutte le principali strutture che operano a livello nazionale per favorire l'innovazione e la digitalizzazione delle imprese si trovano su atlantei4.0.it. I PID mettono a disposizione delle imprese dei voucher per l'acquisto di servizi di consulenza, formazione e tecnologie in ambito impresa 4.0. I voucher sono erogati direttamente dalla Camera di Commercio attraverso bandi ai quali possono partecipare imprese singole o, se condividono un progetto di innovazione, organizzate in gruppo. Che aspetti a entrare nell'economia digitale? Contatta il PID della tua Camera di Commercio o vai su .impresadigitale.camcom.it.
Sosteniamo le donne e gli uomini impegnati nello sviluppo delle imprese e delle attività professionali per affrontare le sfide imprenditoriali, sociali e culturali del nostro tempo, contribuendo al bene comune. Compagnia delle Opere, un criterio ideale, un'amicizia operativa.